Hi, I'm Alex, Associate Editor at Bookstr, and I'm here with Cristina Alger, author of The Banker's Wife. So I've noticed that a running theme throughout your published work has been a lot of separation by way of death or scandal. What is it that first drew you to wanting to write stories like that?
That's a good question. My background is I was an attorney for a long time, so I feel like a lot of my work are sort of grounded in real political events or legal cases that I'm drawn to. And I'm a real thriller reader at my core. That's what I've always loved to read. And so, at the heart of every great thriller is usually a scandal or death of some kind. So, once there's a body on the ground, there's something to investigate. So I think that's pretty much the starting off point for most of my books.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. I also love thrillers. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? Because you started as a lawyer. So
I did. I actually started, I've had a crazy winding career path, but I think like most writers. But I was an English major in college. I was always a big reader. I thought I'd go get a PhD in English. That was, I studied pre-1600 literature, which obviously is super useful in most careers. And after during my senior year, my dad passed away, and so my goals kind of shifted to be back in New York, and I wanted to get a job where I made money so my mom wouldn't be worried about me. So there was a drop box at the end of my hall for Goldman Sachs. I knew nothing about Goldman Sachs or finance. I put my resume in it. They hired me, which was I still don't know why they did, but they did, and I got hired into their legal group. So I went to work there for 2 years, and most of the people in my group ended up going to law school. And so that seemed like a more reasonable thing than going to business school. So I went to law school, and I practiced for a long time. And I was always sort of a closet, I guess not closet, but my hobby was always reading on the side. And then I started closet writing a novel while I was working, and the rest is history, I guess.
That's so crazy. Yeah, I feel like most big authors sort of find their way through different paths. And I'm sure your background as a lawyer has helped and influenced your writing a lot, would you say?
Definitely. So both in terms of like the subject matter of my books, which, as I said, I write, a lot of my books are grounded in kind of legal cases that interest me and political events. But I also, it's interesting, I feel like I really learned how to write in law school. I think law school and being a lawyer teaches you how to write and read in a very sort of concise A to B way. And so for that, I'm very grateful that I have that background, because I think it teaches you how to write in this very clear way that really lends itself to thriller writing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And your book, The Banker's Wife and The Darlings, are both thrillers that deal with like upper class, high society, whereas This Was Not the Plan is more intimate about a father and son. Would you say there's a big difference in the way you go about writing such different stories?
Yeah, so I wrote, This Was Not the Plan is, it is sort of an intimate story. It's really about a father trying to figure out how to be a father, and I wrote it right after I had my daughter, so I was in a state of total sleep deprivation and trying to figure out work-life balance myself. And so that book was a very personal book that came out of my own kind of experience grappling with becoming a parent and being a working person. So that was totally disorganized. It came totally from my heart. I wrote it really quickly in the middle of the night, in like 2 months. The Darlings and The Banker's Wife, because they're both thrillers and they have kind of a financial crime at the core of each, those I sort of plotted more carefully and did it in a more organized way. So I guess, yeah.
Well, that makes sense. And what draws you to thrillers?
I think, since I was little, my dad was a big true crime reader and a reader of thrillers, and I always wanted to keep up with whatever he was reading. So I started reading thrillers, and by thrillers I mean like classic thrillers like Nelson DeMille and John Grisham and that kind of thing at like an inappropriately young age, just so I could read whatever my dad was reading. And then as I, sort of grew into law school, and a lot of the cases that we read about sort of sparked an interest in true crime. So I feel like that's always been sort of my personal interest. And I think the best thriller writers I find are often lawyers, or they're sort of true crime aficionados. So it's kind of interesting to watch those two parts of my life intersect.
Would you say you have like a list of favorite true crime writers?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, there are people. I think I've read pretty much every John Grisham there is, every Nelson DeMille, Lee Child, all the sort of classic thriller writers, and then. I mean, the book that really sparked my interest in true crime initially was Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. So that's a classic that I always sort of go back to. But recently, I feel like there have been a whole spate of really terrific true crime novels, like I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which was terrific, which came out, I think, last spring. And then recently, a friend of mine, Sarah Weinman, wrote The Real Lolita, which is about the case Sally Horner that sparked the book Lolita.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And yeah, she's a fantastic true crime writer. She writes a lot of long form articles, and this is her first book. But she's someone I will read always whenever she publishes anything.
Oh, that's so crazy. Do you have any other genres that you would say
that I write in?
Yeah, or read?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I read everything. So I think any book that, friends of mine say this has a really strong voice or characters that are really fully formed that I want to read. So, I mean, I read everything from science fiction to YA but I'd say I'd kind of alternate mostly between literary fiction, true crime, and thrillers.
Okay. And you are currently writing your fourth novel. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything you're allowed to tell us about it?
Yeah. So it's based on a case that interested me. It's set in Long Island, and it's about the murders of two young girls, which are cold cases, which were previously thought to be unrelated. And the daughter of a female detective kind of digs into both and realizes that they are connected, and there's a sort of larger conspiracy about them. So it's hopefully going to be out next summer. We'll see. I'm in the final throes of finishing the draft, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, that's so exciting. Also, The Banker's Wife has already been picked up for an adaptation. How did that feel to hear about?
It was really exciting. So it was something we actually started working on before the book came out. These producers approached me, and they really wanted to turn it into a limited series. And so we started working on it in February, and the book didn't come out till July. And we had about 6 months where we were sort of going around quietly and recruiting writers and directors and an actress who Rosamund Pike is going to star in it. So I knew that all this was happening before I could tell everyone, which was hard to do because I'm really excited about it. So it's a really cool project. We have an all-female team right now.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's actually something when the initial producer, Sherry Marsh, came to me, she said, wouldn't it be cool if we could get this to be an all-female project? And I said, I mean, that would be a dream. I mean, this book is very much about, strong women and so that was thrilling to me, but I didn't want to limit us. Obviously, there are a lot of great male writers out there. But the first person we signed on was Meredith Steam, who was a writer for Homeland and Cold Case and The Bridge. And she brought in Leslie Glatter, who's the director, from Homeland, and they had worked together a lot. And then Rosamund signed on, and so we just sort of organically created this all-female team, which is very cool.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
All right, I think we will take some questions from our Facebook audience. All right, Madison wants to know, have you ever thought about writing nonfiction?
Oh, no. I mean, I have, a lot of what I write is grounded in sort of a nonfiction story, so I do a lot of research when I'm writing, but I sort of love the flexibility of fiction where, I can make the characters who I want them to be, and that flexibility is fun to me. It's sort of the creative part of the process that I really enjoy, and I've spent so many years footnoting things, having been a lawyer. I don't want to go back to footnoting. So, but, I don't know, never say never, I guess.
Yeah. Do you define yourself as an author of a particular genre, or do you prefer not to tie yourself to a single genre?
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I would say I'm a thriller writer. I thought The Darlings was a thriller. It was not. I think I was the only one who thought it was a thriller. It was not sort of billed that way, but that's how I saw it when I wrote it. And then The Banker's Wife was definitely marketed as a thriller, and I signed a 2-book deal beyond that, and those are both thrillers. So for foreseeable future, I'm a thriller writer. But yeah, I guess, I mean, my second book wasn't, so I'm foremost a writer.
Yeah. Aside from true crime writing, do you have favorites amongst true crime film/television?
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Well, there's so many great podcasts now, too, like true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
So I just finished West Cork, which was phenomenal. That was actually a bookstore owner recommended that to me. So I've gotten into this like weird world of true crime podcasts. But there have been some really terrific true crime documentaries recently.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, there's been I don't know if it's just that maybe I'm more interested in it, but I feel like there's been a resurgence in interest in kind of true crime generally. So,
yeah, I feel like it's really blown up.
yeah, absolutely. So, and I think podcasts are actually a really cool format to deal with true crime because you have, I don't know, West Cork was 12 hours or whatever, so you have a lot more sort of time to really get into the characters and the setting. And
yeah, and you can just like listen to it while you do
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
I'm very into running and listening to podcasts.
Is it true that The Banker's Wife was based on the Panama Papers?
It is true, yes. So it was based on a couple of cases. The Panama Papers had just broken when I started writing this book, and that really sparked my interest in offshore banking. I felt like I didn't know anything about offshore banking, even though I'd worked in banking for many years. And it was such a fantastic collaborative effort on the part of the journalists that broke that story. So the Panama Papers, it was a data leak from inside a Panamanian law firm that serviced offshore banks. And the journalists that broke it did it, it was journalists from all across the world. They did it together. It took almost a year, and they broke the story simultaneously, and they're continuing to do that. And I was really inspired by that. I thought it was really impressive that, no one became sort of territorial over the story. They really worked together, and especially when I started writing this book, we were sort of coming into the election, and there was so much rhetoric about fake news, and I thought it would be cool to write a book where the protagonist is a journalist, and I wanted to sort of capture that sort of collaborative spirit. So anyway, they're in The Banker's Wife, they're